with R.E.M's Monster, because this is a perfect example of a band where I know their hits, but I've never ever went out my way to go through every single individual album and listen to all the albums. And that's a prime example of what we're talking about, or what you were talking about there. The downside to having these sort of digital streaming kind of things going on, where you can't just cherry pick, and you tend to gloss over lesser known stuff. If I did that back in the day, when prior to you, if streaming was a thing 15, 20 years ago, whenever the fuck it was, I started properly listening to the Beatles, fucking probably is coming up for... Is it coming up for nearly 20? No, it can't be. We're talking about what? It is nearly 20 years ago. Fucking hell. It's like 17, 18 years ago. 2007 was when I really started diving into the Beatles. You gave me a pirate disc with all the albums, and I just remember going through it bit by bit, individual, every single fucking song, album song, what would be deemed filler. There's no such thing as a filler song with the Beatles though. And just loving every single thing, discovering them, going on a journey. It was fantastic. If I had Apple Music or whatnot now, I'd just skip over it. I'd just listen. I'd look at the stars. Oh, there's a hit, bang, play it, move on.
I said to you before about that. You know, when I think it was maybe around about the time you got the 2009 box set of the stereo albums, and there was a slight jealousy in that for myself, and I'm not a jealous person. But
no, I understand.
I just felt John's actually going through that journey that I remember so well, just discovering that music for the very first time. And it's something that you can't recreate. It's something you'll never feel again, you know. And it's something that everyone has to experience. Anyone that's interested in music and finds a band that they really love or are interested in, when you get down those sort of first steps of listening to that first album right through to the last album, it's a journey more than anything. And you certainly got that with the Beatles, and I kind of relived that through yourself, because you would say to me, I've just listened to, you know,
fucking Rubber Soul. I thought it was Meatloaf at one point. That's how fucking clueless I was.
You know, and I would be like, yeah, and what did you think? You know, and you would be talking about that sort of feeling you had listening to Rubber Soul. That transition between Help and Rubber Soul, wow, man, just totally different. You know, the Beatles, in terms of their self-awareness, they knew where they were at. They knew in terms of how they wanted to craft their songs going forward, and always evolving. And you know, and just listening to you, just that excitement was something to be had. R.E.M. were like that as well, John.
Yeah, Stephen, I tell you, I wish I was about, and I mean, I probably was about at this point, to be fair, because as we says, this is from a few months ago. It's 30 years old. I'd have been about six. Fucking close you.
94, John, so you were 5 when this
5
came
or
out.
6. It was 95, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd have been,
I mean,
what month was it in 95?
It was September. It was released.
I'd have been 6 at that point then. Yeah. So I wasn't really massively. I mean, I was into music back then. I was listening. I remember listening to Pulp and all of that. Fucking obsessed with his antics on the stage.
John, but sort of paint a picture for anyone that obviously it's a younger age and maybe not as invested in R.E.M. as myself. I'm not saying I'm an expert. There's people out there that know more about them than myself. But in terms of, because of my age, I was 12 when I was introduced to them. 11 actually, 1987. It's the End of the World as we know it, and I Feel Fine. Was released in the UK as a single, and I was just pulled in by that song. I went, oh, who is this band? This is incredible. And everyone else in my class was listening to fucking Wham and all that. And I just was blown away by R.E.M. at this point. Now, they were still on their IRS label at this point. They were still, I don't want to say they were deemed as an indie band at this point, but certainly in terms of mainstream in comparison to what was to come, this was certainly a lot more indie stuff. They signed up to Warner Brothers in 1988 with the album Green, and that was my first album that I bought, and it was a couple of tracks right away, Turn You Inside Out, Orange Crush and Stand from that album. Incredible. And I didn't look back after that. What came after that, obviously Out of Time, we had Shiny Happy People, Losing My Religion, etc. on a fantastically acoustic orientated album, and similar to Automatic for the People, which came out the following year in 1992, a very acoustic sounding album. 1994 we get to, John. I remember where I was when I first heard What's the Frequency, Kenneth.
This is what I'm talking about, Stephen.
Fucking incredible, Stephen, man, telling you.
We spoke about this with the Beatles before.
Incredible.
In the 60s, that, I think, what you experienced with that is what people were experiencing when they were hearing fucking Sergeant Pepper's for the first time.
Yeah.
And hearing the new sort of transition into a new sound, new fucking maybe effects happening for the first time. Just hearing that and thinking, fucking hell.
You know, when you look at, you know, Michael Stipe, Mike Mills, Pete Burton, Bill Berry, their appearance and everything had changed. Bill Berry had grew his hair out. No longer did he look like John Denver, you know, from the previous sort of music videos that we saw on Automatic for the People Now at a Time. This guy had grew his hair out. He was wearing some kind of Matador fucking green suit with flames coming down the sides, curly green hair, curly hair with this grey green suit on. Michael Stipe had shaved his head. It was, you could see obviously from the Losing My Religion videos, you know, it was gone, you know, it was obviously receding, but it just took that step, you know, and just the sound, you know, just it was a dirty sound, and I know this was.
I'm telling you, I genuinely think it's the best fucking distortion overdrive sound I've ever heard. I mean, you can go back to the 50s with Fender stuff, or the 60s, and they're playing through 57 Fender Tweeds and whatnot. But I don't know how the fuck he got that sound. I don't know if it was just straight from I think he played a Vox AC30, Peter Buck. I don't know if that's what it was used in or whether he was using an overdrive pedal or whatnot, but I'm telling you, I've tried to capture that. I've got close a couple of times with a Telecaster. I think he was maybe playing a Jaguar or something. It certainly was like a Fender. I know he played Rickenbacker, but that is one of the greatest fucking overdrive sounds.
Yeah, there was something else about that album as well, that I knew that this was never going to be the same after this, you know, with that band, and I knew that this was probably, in terms of like, you know, peaking. I just felt, I don't know how they're going to be able to go on after this in terms of, you know, shocking the fans in terms of changing their style and stuff like that. And I know that New Adventures in Hi-Fi came out a couple of years later, and it was a fantastic album. I really liked it, and it was the last album that the four were on before Bill Berry, you know, hung up his drums. And it was left with the three of them.
Who could sing as well, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about Monster it was just peak R.E.M. for me. And
I'm going to ask you that, Steve. I was going to ask you that, because you are the R.E.M. guy.
Yeah.
And I was going to put it, I had an alternate thumbnail. Do you think that's their best album they ever released? Because from me, I'm more casual R.E.M. fan. I appreciate their sort of hits. Yeah. I haven't listened to that album. The album's fucking unbelievable. From start to finish, there's just so many different kind of songs.
I think between Automatic for the People and Monster, but they're totally different they're totally different sounds, totally different songs, different structures, production, everything about them are so different. I think that's why I like both of them. But in terms of Monster album, I appreciate I don't like to say bravery, because I think it was just a natural progression for R.E.M. to do that, just in their nature. But it's got some glam rock in there, as you said. It's got heavy distortion. It's very gritty. It's grungy, you know. It's all, and I know there's
stuff going on as well.
Cobain as well. He'd obviously passed by this point when the time the album came out. I think they recorded it back in October 1993 till May 94. So he died during that period. And I think Michael Stipe was very close to Kurt Cobain at that point. So it's very glam, it's very garage. It's, you know, it's got elements of all this stuff. And you look at the singles that were released from it. What's the Frequency, Kenneth? A banging tune. You've got Bang and Blame, another fantastic track. Crush with Eyeliner, Strange Currencies, and Tongue. I know you love Strange Currencies. I always see that as a brother to Everybody Hurts. But tonally, they're all very similar, apart from maybe Strange Currencies in terms of what they're doing, as you said, with Pete Buck's guitar work. It's very similar, but it works. It just works, you know, in terms of the track listings. I just think the album flows as well perfectly. A really good album.
There's some arpeggiated stuff in there, then you go to like tremolo stuff. I Took Your Name, Crush with Eyeliner. Incredible fucking tremolo stuff going on in there. Just the guitar. Stephen, what I love about Peter Buck is it's simplistic guitar playing, but then also he adds complexity. I mean, it really is simplistic. I mean, I love playing Strange Currencies. It's just arpeggiated. It's simple. It's like 4 or 5 chords, but he adds complexity with the arpeggiated stuff, and you see that Following Me as well and stuff like that. Radio Free Europe, he loves the sort of arpeggiated chord shapes. The chord shapes themselves are very simple, but he's just brilliant guitar player. I'm just reading about the tone. It is a Vox AC30. That's what he was playing into.
Yeah.
Just a cranked AC30. We've seen like Brian May, the Beatles. So many classic bands over the years have used Vox AC30s. Fucking great sound. It really is.
And as you said, that it's one of those once in a lifetime moments, and I think that's something missing from today's music. It's very streamlined now, and I don't want to say instantly forgettable, because I think that's maybe an injustice on a lot of artists out there at the moment. But there's just so much. I think it's accessibility more than anything.
But you're right,
it's just
Stephen.
To consume music and dispose of it very easily as well. There's no appreciation, I don't think, as much as there used to be, because of the experience, the sort of level of lengths you'd go.
I just think it's a cultural thing as well. I mean, I just think modern day culture's just empty. It's superficial. It's bullshit. It's TikTok. It's very quick moving. There's low attention spans. Everything's just consumed and discarded, like you said. But what they're mining out of, where they're living day-to-day life, it's just empty. It's shit now. I mean, I don't want to be one of these people that says back in my day, because back in my day it probably wasn't much better. But it's just not the same as the 80s and the 90s and the 60s and the 70s.
Just learning through my kids and stuff like that, and just listening to their conversations and stuff like that. Nobody ever takes. I'm not having a go at that generation or anything like that, but it's just a thing. I think it's just something that's it's been moulded into their psyche, or whatever you may call it. But no one takes the time to really sit down and talk to each other anymore, and take an interest in each other's sort of likes and dislikes. And you can say that about music to an extent as well, that people just want to hear the catchy tune and they want to hear the latest hits, and there's a fashionable element to it as well, in terms of,
I've lost you again,
my
Stephen.
friend, that's I better listen to it and pretend I like it, And I've never been like that, and I know a lot of people are not like that even now, even generations now, they're not like that. They'll go and do their own thing. You have to take time, you have to invest, and really listen to the lyrics, listen to the sounds. You talked about the production, John, in terms of guitar techniques, etc. You have to take the time to appreciate that. But I just don't think there's enough people doing that nowadays. John, I mentioned, I think it might have been on our last show, Pete Buck had said in an interview in the late 90s, early 2000s, that rock and roll became the jazz of what jazz was, in the 1960s. How people looked, rock and rollers looked at jazz as the sort of genre that's in the background and old. Now people are seeing that with rock and roll, and they certainly have been for the past maybe 15, 20 years now.
I mean, because there's no characters. You speak of Liam Gallagher and guys like that. They were the last sort of people who had personality, who would go out and do controversial things. People are just so sanitised now. It's because there's fucking cameras and phones and everything everywhere at all times capturing them. So if they step out of line, they feel like they're going to get crucified. And also, within reason, that's fine, because you don't want people acting like twats and also assaulting, fucking misbehaving to criminal levels. But you need to have a bit of rebellion in you, a bit of rebellious stuff going on. And certainly Oasis back in the day, I loved watching Liam Gallagher and guys like that, how they interacted with the press. There was not two fucks given. I don't care about you, I care about me. I have to get a house. I think that was one interview. He was late getting over to America because he was hunting for a house, and the reporter's like, but what about the fans? I don't give a shit about the fans. I'm looking after me. If I've not got a house, then there's nothing.
You can say the same for Michael Stipe, Mike Mills, Pete Buck and Bill Berry as well, John. I think they did their thing, and I don't think they cared too much about what people thought of them.
Well, I mean, also with Michael, Stephen, he was very politically fucking motivated. He was always taking pot shots at the establishment. That takes balls of steel. Takes balls of steel.
John, I think that's what's missing. I think, artists nowadays are very much controlled by their record label, and they're told what to say and how to say it, and don't have an original thought in your head, basically, and you don't get bands like that now. Well, you do, but they're just not mainstream. When this came out, John, it was something just clicked inside myself, just in terms of being a fan of, at that point, I would have been a fan of R.E.M. for maybe about 7 years at this point. And I knew their stuff, I knew their style, and I liked their style, But this was just on another level. It shocked me. It really did when I saw those first opening shots and those first opening chords to What's the Frequency.
It's a great video, I know.
Which was the opening single of that. It was just loud. It was just ballsy. It was just everything about it. I was just. I remember my jaw just dropped. Like, what the fuck, you know? And I thought.
I mean, Stephen, obviously I didn't experience it at the time, but I remember you showing me. You says, look, go and watch this video from an earlier year with the haircut and the way they looked and just the music, and then you says, look, watch that. And imagine that for the first time that coming out, and you're right, the transformation. I think you kept the head sort of shaved head or deliberately shot until near the end, which is fucking genius.
The bald head tail, you know, that's a reveal. Yeah, definitely was a reveal. You can see it. It was just the way it was constructed, but it was everything about that video as well was fantastic. You know, it was shot almost like it was supposed to be shot in a garage, in a house. But it was obviously just like a warehouse or something like that with a big sort of screen showing obviously the other side of the road. And the way it was shot, the way the cameras were panning and the flashes and flickering lights, and Bill Berry had this sort of short, no-sleeved shirt on, white shirt on, and it was just, the drumming in that song's fantastic, just totally amazing. And obviously the Bill Berry, Mike Mills is coming in with that Matador suit on. I could not believe he was wearing that. I was like, he made it cool, you know. I was like, fucking hell, man, this is the future. I can't believe this is happening, you know. And I was only 18 at the time, so I think I was just the right age for that sort of experience, you know. And I worked in a warehouse at the time, John, and everyone knew I was a big R.E.M. fan. Yeah. I'd wore the
star.
I'd wore the Out of Time stuff, you know, and the Automatic for the People t-shirts, and it was all very.
You had that t-shirt as well that you wore around about that time, didn't you? The one with the star. You had that star t-shirt for a long time as well. It's a fucking brilliant t-shirt.
And then I had obviously a long-sleeved Monster t-shirt. It was a white one with the bear.
I love the bear.
That's an iconic.
The bear is fucking great. I was searching it up for the thumbnail and someone done like a clearer version of it. There's just something about the fact that it's just slightly blurred. It's just a mental image. It's just fucking wild. I love it. It's an iconic album cover. It really is. It's one of the greatest covers ever put together. It's so
just
simple.
That orange. You know, the orange background as well. I know they obviously did that 25th anniversary one with the blue background, but something about that orange one, it was just fucking.
It's mental. It's a mental looking cover. But Stephen, seeing through the track list and you see what you were talking about, maybe with bands experimenting over fucking the course of their actual time and making music. But you look at this album or the actual track listing and just the experimentation. You talk about it. I mean, what's the frequency, Ken, if it's just raucous in your face? And then you go to a tongue. Even Star 69's kind of raucous, but Crush with Fireliner, very tremolo heavy, kind of slower paced, I want to say. Strange Currencies is arpeggiated, very, very slow, sombre song. Tongue, he's just singing really high pitched, I want to say. Stipe. There's just so much variation in sound and what they're doing with the songs in this album. I don't think it's really, and you may disagree, but I don't think it's really till you get to maybe the last 3 songs where I think the standard maybe dips a little bit. I really do think from 1 to 7.
I think in terms of, they're still good songs, but I think in terms of the way they're going tonally, it kind of shifts a little bit. And there's a bit there's a somberness to those last songs, and I don't know, perhaps maybe it was something to do. I know that Michael Stipe had close friendships with, as I said, Kurt Cobain. He had a close relationship with River Phoenix at the time as well, and both of them passed within 6 months of each other. I think River Phoenix was October '93 and Kurt was early '94. So that would have affected them in terms of writing. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that the tone shifts slightly.
Yeah.
Nearer the end
I didn't
of the
know
album,
he was close with Kurt. I actually didn't know that. But I think when you see the impact that had on a whole host of people. I mean, I've been watching videos with Kurt recently. I didn't realise he was such a big Beatles guy. And he really was inspired by the Beatles and the way they evolved. And he wanted to try and do that with, obviously, Nirvana moving forward. Sadly, it didn't happen. Whether you believe what happened with Kurt or not, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the way that he left the mortal coil, if you'd like. I think a lot of people think he get murdered. I don't know. I wasn't there. Not going to go down that route, but he certainly was inspired by the likes of probably R.E.M. to an extent as well. Did this come out before or after he passed? Did you say this came out after?
It was in
and it was
the
inspired?
midst of his production, John, yeah.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have been this then, but he appreciated that kind of evolution in a band, changing their sound, doing something differently, and
Nirvana were doing their thing.
That second album, you look at Nirvana from the first album through to the third album, the evolution's there for all to see. It's a really fucking hardcore indie, like punk inspired.
I think for bands of that age, that period, that sort of late 80s, 89 to probably about 94, they just had this sort of transitional period in terms of style, and Nirvana and R.E.M. were definitely there. It's funny, John, because I think most people in the sort of early 90s to the sort of mid-90s were looking at the likes of bands like U2 as being the supergroup, and I suppose they were sort of, in a way, in terms of mainstream and stuff like that, but I always considered R.E.M. to be just a cut above even U2 at that point. Even prime U2, I just thought R.E.M. had something different. There was that different edge to them. In terms of
U2 are just...
Yeah, you look at Out of Time, you look at Automatic for the People in terms of genre, and it's mostly piano and mandolin orientated, Losing My Religion being one of them for the mandolin, but they had that sort of style, and to take that sort of 2-year period to write, record and produce and release Monster, the growth and the sort of transformation in that band, and to do that when they could have just played it safe and kept with the formula. I think it was Mike Love that always said for the Beach Boys, never fuck with the formula. Well, R.E.M. did, and they did it bravely, and I think it paid off.
We've seen other band.
In terms of audience and all, and they would attract a new crowd as well, with changing their style, and I think for the better.
We've seen other bands doing it. We've seen Radiohead do it, and maybe not yet the sort of plaudits. A lot of people like to say that, what's the name of that fucking one where they went electronic? It's got the sort of mountainscape. It's like an abstract.
OK Computer? I can't remember.
OK Computer was I think that's like their Peppers, Sgt. Pepper's kind of thing. There's one where they went, it was like the third album, fourth album, and it was like electronic inspired. A lot of people went off them at that point. Some people love it though. So it's always contentious when you change up the sort of style and what you're doing, and it can backfire. We've seen that way also in more recent times. Arctic Monkeys, they've went into like a crooner character, almost like fucking type thing where they're playing these 70s crooner singers.
I like that.
People go back against it though.
And
Rainbows.
The thing about that, John, it always feels forced. It always feels like, they know they're consciously doing that for a purpose because they've seen maybe their heroes doing that, in terms of Dylan changing to electric and then going to country, and Bowie forever doing it.
He's the master at it.
He was the master at it, but all those ones that I'm talking about, and including R.E.M. and that, was always an organic transitional. It wasn't a transformation, it was a transitional. It was the growth of the band. They weren't manufacturing that change. It was just the next stage of their evolution, in terms of the Arctic Monkeys and Radiohead, as you said, sometimes it felt deliberate, it felt too,
with Arctic Monkeys it definitely is. I like Alex Turner, but he does come across a bit twatty at times. He's a bit up himself. He famously made a speech at, I think, the Brits or something about rock and roll, never does something. You look up, I'm not going to try and just fucking wanky shite. And I do like the guy, I do. He's a brilliant singer, great guitarist. What he did in the early days in particular, all the way through to maybe the Arabella era, I like to call it. It's not fucking era, but it's a song from that album. Brilliant, but I like some of the newer stuff, but this croony shit, and then he'll go on and perform live, and it's like half the pace of the original song. I understand he's not 18 anymore, but fucking hell, it's definitely deliberate. It's put on. It's not, like you said, an organic transition, because that's where they're going as a band. It's a very deliberate choice. The Beatles, it wasn't a deliberate decision. They just evolved they matured into different people. I'm trying to think of other examples. Also, Bowie, you could say, was deliberate. Bowie was just, it was a conscious choice to take on a different persona, but that was to shake him out of a comfort zone, and he almost took on a new persona so he could then explore different things with music. Finn White Duke, fucking Ziggy Stardust stuff, obviously, all the other things. But, I mean, it's an iconic album. I mean, it stands the test of the time, and even in an era where we're constantly talking, Stephen, about the 90s, in particular, being the last great decade for musical and maybe artistic output in general, it's just became samey. I mean, there's been some good stuff from the early 2000s, but I just feel, I mean, I'm not trying to deride all music that's come out in the last 10, 15 years, but what you touched on earlier is absolutely spot on. It's so easy to listen to, and then just, I mean, I find myself, there's a pop song will come out and I'm like, I quite like that, and I'll listen to it heavily, and then I just stop, and then a year later I'll go through my music and I'm like, fuck, I remember that, but I've not listened to it in about a year. It's just hard, intensive listening, and then you just forget about it. Stuff like this is like generational music.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, John, I was actually just looking at additional musicians that obviously contributed to the album Monster, and one that catches my eye right away. I know obviously Linda Stipe's in there, but in terms of the track Bang and Blame, which I really did like, I liked the video for it as well. One of the backing vocals, which I didn't know until I just looked there, was Rain Phoenix, obviously siblings to River and Joaquin.
I didn't even know there was a third Phoenix.
It shows the closeness, obviously, of that relationship. But yeah, I mean, fantastic, John. A great album. It's something that I always like to listen to, you know, time and time again. I always go back to it. The 25th anniversary version obviously cleaned up.
Fucking hell, so many Phoenix siblings. That's crazy. I've just discovered that.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
And they've all got fantastic names as well. But I think in terms of the band, this was sort of
actresses and singers. It's crazy. Sorry.
I think it was maybe the last sort of one that I would say was probably the highest quality album from R.E.M. New Adventures in Hi-Fi, which came out in 1996, was a very good album. There's no doubt about it. It was Bill Berry's last album before he left. And from there, you look at the albums like Up, that came out in 98, I think. It didn't have the same quality in terms of comparison. And I did have that sense that in 1994, Monsters album was just, it was just the sort of peak moment for R.E.M.
You were right, Stephen. I was 5, I wasn't 6. I'm talking shite.
I could sense it was the sort of last great album from R.E.M. at that point, sadly, because I just knew that with every band you have that sort of peak moment, and then everything after it is just not in comparison to it.
Even the Beatles. I mean, we love the fucking Beatles and brilliant output, but Rubber Soul and Revolver are the definitive albums, and people will say Sgt. Pepper's, but they're talking shite. It's Rubber Soul and Revolver, and they maintain, they don't really dip, but I would actually argue maybe they do dip. I think we discussed this recently, actually, where as much as we love Abbey Road and Let It Be, there is a dip off. I mean, the output isn't what it was in the mid-60s. Maybe, say 65 through to 65 through to maybe 68 White Album. It's fucking unbelievable. Like, just incredible songs. They're dipping off a little bit near the end. Obviously, George is coming out.
Abbey Road and Let It Be are very good albums, Sean. We talked about this, but there is a disconnect with them. Yeah. There's no doubt about it, that in terms of the songwriting process and even the relationships within the band are very fragmented. And even the sort of B-side to Abbey Road, the collection of songs that were spliced together, there's a sort of forced nature to it. Yeah. There's nothing organic. People like it.
I mean, Lennon admitted that.
But it's not my cup of tea. I'm not really into that kind of thing. Segments of throwaway songs.
Lennon literally said that, didn't he? He said it was just unfinished songs that we used as an excuse to get them out, get rid of them. Yeah. That was it. I mean, it worked well, to be fair. They did put it together well. It was
but I still look back at R.E.M. and I think about them and I go, you know something, just I'm glad to be I was alive to experience these albums firsthand. And
Steve, you got to see them live.
Yeah, I got to see them live.
Setting, Stirling Castle. You says it was late summer.
Yeah,
light rain.
Bill Berry wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know, but is Michael Michael Stipe said, you know, a three-legged dog is still a dog.
Is, yeah.
It's a great quote. You know, so they still had the magic, but it was just something about that album, 1994 for me. And it carried through to 95, obviously, with the release of the singles from the album. It was just a magical time to be an R.E.M. fan.
Absolutely. And also prior to that, but prior to this sort of, they did do like a new deal, didn't they, with another recording label? Yeah, was that like the Radio Free Europe and Fall On Me era? It was late 80s.
R.E.M. stuff, John. Yeah, that
Fucking
was
brilliant
the
songs.
more independent stuff, yeah.
I mean, my favourite R.E.M. song is probably Fall On Me. I absolutely fucking love that song. It's incredible. Love playing it.
I was at the age group, John, where at that point I would be listening forward to their stuff, and it wasn't till later on I went, there's not more stuff coming out from them, so I'll go back to the IRS catalogue.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you said, John, just working your way back through Murmur, etc.
Is it Gardening at Night? Is that the drummer that's singing? Am I right in saying that? It's fucking
I'm not
brilliant.
sure who sings that one, John.
Maybe talking shit because I'm seeing Michael Stipe on the mic.
That was on some kind of it wasn't a greatest hits, it was like a best of sort of B-sides, wasn't it, and stuff?
Yeah, it was from 87, they're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so many, I mean, again, you've got multiple fucking people singing in the band. It's not just what, I mean, obviously Michael Stipe is the singer, but am I right in saying that they
were all right.
Yeah.
I don't know about singing, John. I know Mike Mills took his hand to a lot of the bassist with the glasses. He sang a lot of the songs as well, Near Wild Heaven.
Because there was definitely a second voice in one of the songs on Monster, but it was higher pitched, and they were kind of like singing back and forth. I can't remember the one. I need to go back and listen.
I think it might have been Mike Mills.
Yeah.
It probably was him, because I think he was a secondary singer in the band.
Great voice as well.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, but
really amazing.
I mean, it's crazy, Stephen. I mean, you'll feel it more, obviously, because you fucking were listening avidly to them back in the day. But 30 years, you think of 30 years. I mean, I'm noticing it more and more now. Like 20 years ago was 2005. I vividly fucking remember 2005 like it was yesterday. And it's just mad when you see things like Stand on the Shoulder of Giants, fucking Monster, 30 years old, 25 years old. It's fucking crazy how time's flying. And it's wild. I mean, someone said something recently. I think it was, God, what was it again? God, who was it? There was a bigger gap, I think, between the Beatles splitting up and maybe Oasis or something doing an album, and they were talking about the Beatles, than there is between Oasis. But fuck it, that can't be right. Between those albums coming out and now, it's crazy. It's fucking mental. I don't know. I can't remember the exact thing, but
it's funny because you're absolutely right, and I think when I look back at years gone by, and you think of those sort of time differences, the sort of period, just to give an example, like when Free as a Bird came out for the Beatles in 1995, it was only 15 years after John Lennon's death, but when I was living that time, I just think 1980 seemed like so long ago. I know it was only 15 years ago, but it seems like miles ago, But when I think of 15 years now, it doesn't feel that long.
It's because obviously as you get, when you're younger, time literally does flow slower because you're experiencing new things all the time.
Yeah.
There's definitely a science to that. I'm pretty sure they says that also it's not literally going slower, but it feels slower. The way you experience the world does feel slower. So that time gap, 15 years, feels like a fucking eternity. But as you get older, and you've already learnt so much, and the new experiences aren't as readily available. Time just, it does seem to speed, and it feels like it's fucking gone by in the blink of an eye. I always sort of judge myself based on John Lennon. Like, where was John Lennon at this time? And I've been doing this since I was like 17, 18, and listening avidly to the Beatles for the first time properly. I mean, I knew of the Beatles when I was a little kid. I always knew of them, but it was the fucking hits from the early days. But when I first went right down a rabbit hole, I always used to think, right, what was John doing at this point? Because, I mean, I've literally got a painting of the guy in my wall, fucking absolutely, the guy's my icon. And I was thinking yesterday, I'm 36 now, John would have been probably coming off that lost weekend, the year or so in LA. He's now getting back on the horse again, getting ready to maybe think about recording. Was that after Walls and Bridges and Mind Games? It was, wasn't it?
The time was 36. He was
75.
he was a dad again with Sean, so he had the 5-year period, obviously, just looking after Sean. So
because 73 was Mind Games.
He had all that stuff behind him,
Yeah,
all the stuff that already happened.
The Beatles, all those incredible fucking solo albums, Plastic Ono Band, Imagine, Mind Games, Walls and Bridges.
Go to America, go to India,
go to
Australia,
Japan, going all over the fucking world. So I like to compare myself, and I'm like, holy fuck, this guy lived about 50 lives in the time what I've experienced. It's fucking astonishing. So you're right, time, you're best not thinking about time and how it flows. Sam.